Welcome back to Star Wars Timeline. The Bad Batch Episode 3 Replacements is finally here. Today's review is going to be a slightly different format. The first two episodes I already reviewed were completely non-spoiler. Today I want to change things up a little bit. First we're going to do the non-spoiler review. I will mark it, I'll stamp it in the video so you guys never get confused. And then the second half of the video is going to be some spoilers I will talk about. If you missed the first two episodes that I've already reviewed, I'll leave the links below in a consecutive order, so each week you guys could follow each and every review that I've done. I have my notes in front of me. Let's begin with the non-spoiler reviews. First thing I want to talk about is the parallel stories, which I had a quick discussion in the previous video where I was trying to speculate and to see which direction this episode will go. And as I speculated, what happened here, we had parallel stories going on. So as in the description from IMDb, we had a little snippet of the episode. They were saying that the Bad Batch team will crash in this desolate moon. Also, concurrently here, with the developing characters and their story taking place on the moon, there's other stuff happening that pushes the overall plot forward, which I was happy to do, because I was trying to figure out what are they going to do if we just stick with the clones on the desolate planet. So they veer off, and there's two parallel stories happening here. It was interesting to see how the Bad Batch, the crew, was slightly bickering with one another, but then they found their own place, and to get out of this desperate situation, each one had to employ their skills, whatever they excel at. Another thing is, we see a major shift in the Imperial echelons. You know, there's a new order, and things are going to be done differently from now on, especially particularly what has to do with the military. So we saw that story thread continue here. So the episode wasn't really isolated as I first thought it was going to be and just dealing with its own contained story. No, this episode actually pushes the overall plot of the show forward, and I was happy to see that. Really dark stuff here. There's mature military themes being explored, and the show continues to reinforce the trend that it has matured. It has grown with its audience, and it's much more appealing to adults this time around. There's some really cool Easter egg here and a nod to another franchise, which I will talk in the spoilers later, but I just felt it was really cool. It has been done in Star Wars shows before, and I will discuss that, but I think the fans of science fiction in general will be happy. In terms of action, this episode was more like episode 2. It's pretty brief and light on action, but when it was there, it was interesting to see, and it serviced the story. So I kind of like took a backseat again in this episode. Now, from this point forward, it's going to be spoilers. Once again, you guys have been warned. This is continuing with the spoiler review here because I want to get into some details and discuss them more with you guys and hear your thoughts about this. So the first thing is we're introduced to a new Imperial character, Rampart, and he arrives to the Camino and he shows up in front of the Tarkin with his elite squad, a new Imperial recruits. So here's the first moment that we see where the new Empire is trying to replace the clones and set a new standard in the military. Pretty awesome, and I think it's going to be a larger arc, at least for this first season, and we see this major shift. It's something that has been looked at more in Star Wars Legends before the Disney took over in 2015, and it almost has those Legends notes here. I'm like, oh man, finally we see that part where Empire will establish its new order and how these new recruits are a lot less effective than cloners, because cloners are trained from birth. So we'll see the difference here. Next thing on the list is the military politics. We see a little bit of Rampart, this military opportunist, and I almost felt there's like a parallel to Director Krennic from Rogue One, who will stop at nothing but to get power with his accomplishments and, establish himself a career in the Imperial ranks. I'm really looking forward to him and see how he's going to evolve and whether he's going to flip sides or see the horrors and atrocities of war and become like a rebel spy or something like that, but very unlikely. This dude looks like he's an idealist. He believes, he's a believer, he's going to follow Emperor's every rule. Very cool, and I know a lot of fans wanted that side of that point of view from the Empire, how they view this war, why they feel so self-righteous about it, and that character personifies that aspect of it. Next, we have the Saw Gerrera's encampment. While our guys, the Bad Batch, are stuck in this desolate moon, there's a parallel story where Rampart introduces the new elite squad, and they're being led by Crosshair into this area, into this Saw Gerrera's encampment planet we saw in the previous episode, for a test run. Tarkin wants to see how this new program is going to run. Are recruits as good as the clones? And as they arrive, we get one of the darkest moments in the show, and I would say in Star Wars in general. My jaws dropped, guys. There's the part, which I'm assuming you saw the episode, again, you have been warned with the spoilers, where Crosshair and his chip make him an unwilling participant in this war. And when one of the recruits refuses to murder in cold blood innocent civilians that Saw Gerrera had in his camp, who were promised a transfer off planet, Crosshair, at point blank range, just shoots this guy in the chest, and he says, "Good soldiers follow orders." And then he forces the entire elite squad murder in cold blood these innocent civilians. Of course, it happens off screen because it has to cater to kids as well. But I thought there was definitely a highlight of the episode and one of the most interesting and darker and tragic moments in Star Wars in general. I mean, just wow, this show just pushed that envelope. Another thing I wanted to talk about is the comparison between Omega and Crosshair. We have two parallel storylines. This episode was very deliberate in its format, what it wanted to accomplish. Crosshair is unfortunately controlled by technology, one of the common themes in Star Wars that George Lucas always explored, technology versus nature. And he's being controlled by this chip, and he's being a machine, really, a killing machine. That's what Soldier is. While Omega, who's also a clone, but she doesn't have inhibitor chip, and she's not willing to follow orders and just stick around and do everything she's told. Because when the moment arrives and Hunter goes in search of the power cell, a capacitor that they're missing to fix their ship in order to get off the planet, she goes along with Hunter, and when he's disabled, she takes action. She goes in, she goes deep in the cave, and she deals with the moon dragon, but she doesn't murder it. She evaluates the situation, and she has kind of like misgivings. And she's like, "Oh, hold on a second. This creature is not dangerous. He's just hungry. He was looking for a source of food." I was like, wow, okay, so it's a very interesting contrast between the two of them. And the last thing I wanted to mention was the fantastic homage to the aliens. I mean, you guys, fans of the series, knew it right away. The visual language when they land on the planet, those darker, colorless hues, and when they see these little things on the ground which look like the facehugger eggs. And when the Hunter gets close, we see the moon dragon do this thing, obviously visually kind of like paying homage to the facehugger before it just jumps on his throat. I was like, oh my god, this is really freaking awesome. And even back to the Saw Gerrera's encampment, one of the elite squads is carrying the torch, another signature weapon from the Alien franchise, particularly used in Part 2. I was like, oh man, this is pretty sweet. And it's interesting how to see Filoni is kind of like introducing that again, because this has been done before. Those of you who saw the Clone Wars show, there's a second battle of Geonosis. And when they go into the underground to deal with the Genosian queen, there's a lot of parallels with the aliens too, specifically. They go deep in the caves. One by one that the clones are being dispatched and taken away. And then there is zombie-like creatures who attack them. You could see it right there. For the last, let's talk about the future. What do I hope to see in the next episode and beyond? I am really, really intrigued by Rampart character and how he rose to the rank of the Admiral in this episode, and where they're going to take it from this point forward. This Imperial point of view that a lot of you guys have been clamoring, it is finally here. And it honestly, seeing him with that gray military uniform and against, Tarkin and the rest of them, it's kind of like brings that Imperial era. Obviously, we saw it in the Rebel show, but here it just visually looks more in line with the original trilogy of films, because the characters are a little bit more proportionate, they're a little bit more realistic looking. The action, the special effects in the show are really almost like movie quality. And that's what I'm looking forward to the most. Once again, guys, thank you so much I would love to hear your comments in the section below. Let me know how you enjoyed this episode. If you were disappointed, if there were any things that you didn't like. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I appreciate your time and your support. If you're new here, please like and subscribe, support my channel, and I will see you next week. May the Force be with you.